Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working as a fleet manager for a high-end catering company for about 5 years now. We're known for handling exclusive events, everything from corporate galas to million-dollar weddings. Our reputation rides heavily on our ability to deliver delicate items like elaborate wedding cakes and fancy ice sculptures without a single scratch. That's why I personally handpick our delivery drivers, and I'm especially proud of our senior driver who's been with us for over a decade. This incident happened last year, but I had to wait to share it since it was an ongoing case. It started as a regular day. I was doing my usual fleet management duties when I got a call from our senior driver. She's honestly the most careful driver I've ever met. In all her years, she's never had a single incident with our delicate deliveries. If anything, some clients joke that she's too careful with their orders. She called to report a road rage incident that had just occurred. Thankfully, she had already completed her delivery, so no client orders were at risk. She explained that someone had brake-checked her on the main road into town before speeding off. I started taking down all the usual information: license plate, vehicle description, time, and location. Before I could even finish processing the incident report, our main office line started ringing. Little did I know I was about to deal with the entitled couple themselves. I barely managed to start my greeting for premium catering services when the angry husband cut me off, screaming that our driver had tried to run them off the road. I had to hold back a laugh. Our senior driver, who treats every speed bump like it might crack a Fabergé egg, running someone off the road, that would be the day. I tried to be diplomatic, suggesting that perhaps they had been in the vehicle's blind spot, pointing out the warning signs we have on our vans about this very issue. Instead of listening, the wife immediately jumped in with racist comments about minimum wage workers and immigration status. Her husband joined in, accusing our driver of attempted murder and raging about us making excuses. I attempted to calm them down, explaining that I just wanted to understand the situation. The husband responded with threats, demanding to know if I knew who he was and warning that he'd shut down our operation. He then threatened to involve the police and sue us if we didn't provide hefty compensation. That's when the wife made their real intentions clear. They had an upcoming party and suggested they might let this all go if we agreed to cater it for free. I had to take a moment to process the audacity of their demand. Were they really trying to extort free catering services over their own road rage incident? The husband, interpreting my silence as confusion, started questioning my English comprehension abilities with racist undertones. At this point, I'd had enough. I had already connected the dots about their reported road rage incident. I asked if they were driving the gold four-door crossover with the license plate I had on record. The husband responded by asking if I was the van driver, to which I explained that no, I wasn't, but our driver had already reported their brake-checking incident. He tried to justify their actions by claiming they were trying to stop a dangerous driver. When I mentioned reviewing our vehicle's 360-degree camera footage, the husband scoffed and claimed such technology didn't exist. I smiled as I pulled up the footage from our fleet management software. What I saw confirmed exactly what our driver had reported. Their gold crossover wasn't just traveling in the blind spot. They were fully behind our van, then deliberately sped up to cut it off when our driver signaled to change lanes. I described to them exactly what I was seeing in the footage. How the wife had sped up when our driver signaled, forced their way into the blind spot, and refused to yield until they were forced onto the shoulder. When the wife tried to interrupt my description, I shut her down and continued describing how they had dangerously cut in front of our van without signaling and brake-checked us. I then suggested that involving the police might be a good idea after all. The wife started sputtering incoherently while her husband yelled at her to hang up the phone, calling her Karen. They quickly disconnected the call. They hung up, but that wasn't the end of it. I immediately filed an online police report, attaching the footage from our van's cameras. About a week later, I received confirmation that they were being charged with reckless driving and attempted insurance fraud. Apparently, they had already filed a false claim with their insurance company about our driver causing damage to their vehicle. Their insurance company got hold of our footage too. Not only were their claims denied, but they were dropped by their insurance provider. They are now stuck with some high-risk insurance provider, paying premium rates that would make anyone's wallet cry. Oh, and that party they wanted us to cater for free? They ended up hiring some budget catering service instead. One of our regular clients attended and told me it was an absolute disaster. Apparently, the store-bought cake collapsed right as they were trying to serve it. My family and I moved to this suburban neighborhood about 6 months ago after my father got promoted to a senior position in Homeland Security. The promotion meant relocating from our small apartment in the city to a proper house with a yard. My parents had always dreamed of having a more sustainable lifestyle, so they invested in solar panels right after we moved in. It was a significant investment, but worth every penny considering the energy independence it provided us. Everything was perfect until about 2 weeks ago when our next-door neighbor, who I'll call Karen, started showing an unusual interest in our solar setup. At first, it seemed innocent enough. She approached me one day commenting on how fancy our panels looked and mentioning her high electricity bills. When I simply acknowledged that they helped with our bills, she proceeded to ask how they worked and if we had extra power we could share. I tried to explain politely that solar panels don't work that way. They're connected to our home's electrical system and aren't meant for sharing between houses. She wouldn't accept this, insisting that we couldn't possibly be using all that power. She then mentioned her son was in law enforcement and suggested he could help set up some connection between our houses. I had to tell her that wouldn't be legal or safe, explaining that the system was specifically designed for our house. She walked away huffing and puffing. The next day she came back while I was watering the front yard. She immediately started telling me about how she'd spoken to her son about our solar panels. She claimed he said it was perfectly fine to share power between neighbors, making sure to emphasize that he was a SWAT team member who knew about these things. When I tried to explain again that it wasn't possible, starting with ma'am, she got angry. She snapped at me for calling her ma'am and asked if I knew who her son was, warning that he could make my life very difficult. When I called out her obvious threat, she tried to backtrack slightly, saying it would be a shame if something happened to our fancy house and reminding me again about her son's supposed influence in law enforcement. I went inside and told my mother about the interaction. She suggested we just avoid engaging with Karen, but it only made things worse. She started showing up at random times, sometimes early in the morning or late in the evening, always with the same demands and thinly veiled threats. The situation came to a head last Friday. My father was home early for once, and we were all sitting down for dinner when the doorbell rang aggressively, multiple times. Then came the pounding on the door. We could hear Karen shouting from outside, announcing her presence and demanding we share our power, threatening to call her son if we didn't comply. My father, who had been listening to our stories about Karen but hadn't encountered her himself yet, calmly got up from the table. My mother tried to stop him, but he had that look in his eyes, the one he gets when he's about to handle a situation permanently. He opened the door and Karen immediately launched into her rant before realizing she wasn't talking to me or my mother. When my father interrupted her threats about her son, she was caught off guard and asked who he was. My father introduced himself as the homeowner and revealed his Homeland Security position. He challenged her to finish her threat, pointing out how interested he'd be to hear about a SWAT team member planning to abuse his position to harass a federal employee's family. Karen was immediately flustered and started stammering. My father pressed on, demanding her son's name and department, mentioning his intention to discuss this attempted intimidation with internal affairs. I could see the color drain from Karen's face. My father continued bringing up potential federal charges for threatening a Homeland Security official's family, noting that he dealt with actual terrorists who were less persistent than her. As Karen started backing away, stumbling over her own feet, my father delivered his final warning. He made it clear that if she ever came to our property again with threats or demands, he would personally ensure every law enforcement agency in the state would know about her attempts at intimidation and her son's alleged involvement. She practically sprinted back to her house. We haven't heard a peep from her since, and mysteriously, a for sale sign appeared in front of her house 3 days later. My father later told us he had made a few calls to verify if she actually had a son-in-law enforcement. Turns out she didn't. Her only son works as an assistant manager at a fast food restaurant 2 towns over. We saw her getting solar panel quotes last week. Guess she finally figured out how to solve her electricity bill problems the legal way. I've always been known in our neighborhood for my elaborate holiday decorations. It started 3 years ago when my husband and I moved into this lovely suburban community. The previous owners had warned us about the strict HOA, but we figured we could handle it. Little did we know we'd end up in the middle of the most ridiculous Halloween drama ever. This year I decided to go all out with my Halloween display. The theme? A mock crime scene featuring the HOA's excessive fining practices. You see, in the past year alone they'd fined us for everything. From our grass being half an inch too tall to having the wrong shade of white on our mailbox. So I thought, why not have some fun with it? My display included several props and signs. The centerpiece was a dummy covered with a white sheet, splattered with fake blood, corn syrup and food coloring totally washable. Around it were various signs showing ridiculous fines. Questioning board, $1,000 fine, non-covenant violations, $2,500 fine, and my personal favorite, illegally fined to death. I even added some crime scene tape and spooky lighting for effect. The neighborhood kids loved it. Parents would stop by to take pictures, laughing at the dark humor. But not everyone was amused. One evening while I was cooking dinner, my husband called me to the window. He urgently told me to come look, saying the vice president of the HOA and his wife were outside taking pictures. I watched as they meticulously documented every part of my display, their faces twisted in disgust. The next day my doorbell rang. It was a police officer. He greeted me and explained that he was there about a complaint regarding my Halloween decorations. When I asked if there was a problem, he told me that the vice president of the HOA had filed a complaint, claiming my display was threatening and disturbing the peace. I defended my display, pointing out that it was Halloween and supposed to be spooky. The officer was understanding, saying he'd seen worse and just wanted to let me know about the complaint. I thanked him for the information. A week later, I submitted a records request and got the body cam footage from when they filed the complaint. The vice president and his wife were quite theatrical in their performance at the police station. The vice president dramatically declared that we were sick and possibly dangerous people who were clearly threatening the HOA. He made a big deal about the display showing a dead body. His wife chimed in, claiming she couldn't sleep at night, knowing they lived near such disturbed individuals, and wondered aloud if we might actually be violent. The officer in the recording calmly explained that since it was Halloween season, the decorations fell within protected speech and didn't violate any laws. The vice president sputtered about community standards and how unacceptable it all was. The officer could barely keep a straight face during their dramatic presentation. They tried everything to get me to take it down. Emergency HOA meetings were called. Threatening letters were sent. But I had checked all the bylaws carefully. There was nothing specifically prohibiting Halloween displays. They even tried to pass a new rule, but it would take months to implement. The display stayed up until November 1st, exactly as planned. But this story doesn't end here. Remember how I mentioned I'm big on holiday decorations? Well, Christmas is coming up and I've got something special planned. The theme? The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, with a twist. I'm working on a massive display featuring the Grinch dressed suspiciously like our HOA vice president, complete with his signature bow tie and clipboard. Instead of stealing presents, he is stealing joy, represented by all the things the HOA has banned over the years. Colorful garden gnomes, children's basketball hoops, and wind chimes. I'm adding a special sign that quotes our community guidelines about holiday decorations being encouraged to spread seasonal joy. Let's see them try to fight that one. My neighbors have been secretly sending me messages of support. Apparently, I'm not the only one tired of the ridiculous rules and fines. Some have even offered to contribute to my Christmas display fund. Who knew my Halloween decoration protest would turn into a neighborhood-wide resistance movement? The vice president still won't make eye contact with me at the grocery store, and his wife crosses the street when she sees me coming. But hey, at least they've stopped sending us weekly violation notices about our bird feeder being 2 inches too close to the property line. As for my Halloween display, it's carefully packed away in our garage, ready for next year. I'm thinking of adding a new sign. Fined for existing, $10,000. Too much? Nah, in this neighborhood, that's probably next on their agenda. My husband and I have been pretty excited about this year's presidential election. We've been following all the debates, doing our research, and making sure we're well-informed voters. This is actually my first time voting since becoming a citizen. I moved here from Canada 8 years ago and finally got my citizenship last year after a long and expensive process. So, yeah, this was a really big deal for me. We decided to go vote early in the morning to avoid the crowds. It was a chilly Tuesday, and we had both taken the morning off work specifically for this. The voting location was at our local community center, just a 15-minute drive from our house. Everything seemed normal as we pulled into the parking lot until we noticed something odd at the entrance. This young woman was standing right in front of the doors, arms crossed, looking like she owned the place. She couldn't have been more than 21. As we approached the entrance, she literally stepped in front of us, blocking our path. My husband politely asked her to let us through. Her response was shocking. She told us that no one was allowed to go in until her boyfriend arrived. When I asked her to clarify what she meant, she doubled down and declared that she and her boyfriend deserved to vote more than anyone else there. She explained that since he was running late, she wouldn't let anyone in until he showed up. My husband tried to reason with her, explaining that she couldn't prevent people from exercising their right to vote. But she just got more aggressive, boasting about how her boyfriend's family supposedly ran the town and claiming that we probably didn't even understand the issues at hand. At this point, I was getting really angry. I told her that what she was doing was illegal and that she couldn't interfere with people's right to vote. She responded by laughing in my face and then taking a threatening step towards us. She started making threats about how she'd make sure everyone knew who messed with her, bragging that her boyfriend's father was a lawyer who would make our lives miserable. Just as I was about to respond, we heard the community center's door open. A staff member in a blue vest came out, looking concerned. The young woman immediately tried to play victim, claiming we were harassing her. My husband quickly explained that she was the one blocking the entrance and preventing people from voting. The staff member was very firm with her, telling her that she needed to move aside immediately. They explained that what she was doing counted as voter intimidation and was a federal offense. They gave her a choice: either move away from the entrance or they would call the police. The young woman's response was predictable. She started demanding to know if they knew who she was and who her boyfriend was, acting insulted at being spoken to in such a way. The staff member shot her down immediately, saying they didn't care if her boyfriend was the president himself. They warned her again to move away, mentioning that security cameras had already captured her blocking voters. The young woman's face turned bright red. She launched into a screaming tirade, threatening that we'd all regret this and that her boyfriend would sue everyone. While she was having her meltdown, my husband and I quickly went inside to vote. The whole process took about 20 minutes. When we came out, we saw a police car in the parking lot, and the young woman was sitting in the back, still yelling. Apparently, she had tried to push past the staff member to get inside and had knocked over an elderly person who was trying to enter. Wrong move. The staff member spotted us leaving and came over to apologize for the incident. They explained that they'd already called the county election board to report the interference, and the police were taking statements from witnesses. Turns out voter intimidation is taken very seriously, and Miss My Boyfriend Runs This Town was about to learn that the hard way. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.